Ohio's weather may finally be consistent enough to start planning outdoor activities, including trips to the 75 state parks, with another one on the way. But the state's Department of Natural Resources didn't get a warm reception from the Ohio House. It voted to cut funding to ODNR by more than $55 million from Governor Mike DeWine's initial budget request, which increased funding for the agency. ODNR's director says that could hurt tourism by affecting something visitors say they want to see. Governor Mike DeWine's budget increased funding for ODNR by 6.5% in the first year and then decreased it by 0.5 point in the second. So $656 million in the first year in the original budget, $652 million in the second. The House cut that by almost 3.5% in the first year and 4.2% in the second. What will that cut do if it stands? I mean, how will that impact people who are coming to state parks?
Right. So most of the cut relates to state parks. So out of that $655 million budget, a lot of that is federal funding or fees, other kinds of revenue. So the portion of our budget that's funded by the General Revenue Fund is just a fraction of it. It's about, we requested $175 million. So a lot of that is about our state parks. So our most important, our leading increase, besides the H2 Ohio program, which is our #1 priority, our leading increase was for state parks. And most of that was about law enforcement. So when our visitors go to a state park, we've done lots of surveys, lots of focus groups. What they want to feel welcome and they want to feel safe. And we hear comments from many people where they say, I never saw a ranger. Why did I go through that park and I never saw a ranger? And so we want to increase that law enforcement presence. We think people will not only feel safer, we think they actually will be safer, because while you can't prevent any particular accident from happening, we think having more of a presence will make people think twice before they go past that big sign that says dangerous cliffs, don't go here. We can't have someone stationed there 24/7, but by having more presence in the parks, we think people will make safer choices, will have quicker response time. Our number of law enforcement officers has gone down pretty significantly over the decades, and we need to rebuild some of that.
But you haven't had any incidents. I mean, you've had a couple of things. There was an incident in Hocking Hills where a woman died, some things like this, but you haven't had any major incidents, any shootings or anything like that.
Not shootings, but I'll give you a couple examples that I shared with the Finance Committee the other day. So campground disputes are pretty common. They're like domestic violence disputes. And just a couple of weeks ago, we had a couple with a 4-month-old baby, and there was a dispute between the parents. The father threatened our officers, had a firearm. He was eventually arrested, and the child went to Children's Services. That happens. It's not typical. I mean, people are usually very safe. It's a family-oriented area, but that happens, and our folks have to be prepared to respond to it. We do have other deaths that might not get reported here. That one in Hocking Hills was very tragic and had a lot of elements around it. But it wasn't that long ago, a young woman fell off a cliff at Hosak's Cave out at Salt Fork State Park and unfortunately did not survive. Those are the kinds of things. We need a presence and we need a response time to prevent. And our officers work so closely with local law enforcement. I can't say enough about the sheriffs and the police departments that work with our folks, but we can't put all the burden on them. They're strapped as it is, and we don't want to burden them further. So this law enforcement piece is really important.
One of the other things that ODNR does is work on these abandoned oil and gas wells, orphan wells. And environmental groups and the oil and gas industry are together on that issue that those wells need to be capped. So would this budget cut potentially hurt that? I mean, you just got some money from the controlling board to try to go in there and find, there's like 19,000 of these orphan wells around the state, and you don't even know where they all are.
Right, at least 19,000, and we expect to find more. This budget cut will not impact that. So our biggest obstacle to making progress in plugging these wells is the availability of contractors to do the work. So we have been hitting the pavement hard trying to find contractors over the last few years. I mean, and I'll share with you, this wasn't a priority before. So when I looked at a 5-year period before this administration, and in that 5-year period from like 2013 to 2018, 120 some wells were plugged. So since we came in and made it a priority, we have plugged over 600 wells. We have another 250 in contract, but it's finding the people that do it. At this point, with the state money and the federal money that's coming in. The federal money just started flowing this year. We have the resources. Now we need the contractors to do the work. I mean, I'd like to get to a place where we're doing 1,000 or 2,000 a year. That's where we need to be to really make progress on this issue in Ohio.
What's the danger of not capping orphan wells?
So methane releases, and you can look at any one well. And that might not be an issue, but when you have 19,000 or more, right? We're still looking for more. That is one of the things. There are some other dangers as well. And what we find with these wells, if it's in a cornfield, it might be a fairly easy capping project. But sometimes we had one that was under a gymnasium in a school. That's not okay, right? So we prioritize based on safety. Some are in suburban neighborhoods. Someone will discover one in their backyard because smells and things are happening. Sometimes they're underwater. So the cost to cap them varies a lot based on that.
Let's talk about drilling or fracking on state lands. Now, Governor Mike DeWine signed into law a measure that will make it easier for those who want leases to drill on public lands to get them by changing the language to say that a state agency shall accept a lease rather than may accept a lease. And also in that same bill, it categorized natural gas as green energy, though, as you just said, there's methane's a major component of that. But DeWine has also said that as long as he's governor, quote, we are not going to drill in state parks. So what does that law actually do? Can we expect to see any sort of drilling in state parks?
I think we will see drilling under state parks. So there's a lot in that. So that law that changed the words from may to shall only applied during the period of time when we didn't have rules in place. That law went into effect, a handful of weeks ago. Our rules go into place May 28th. So we've gone through the whole process. And really what we want to do at the Department of Natural Resources is be responsible. And when we bid out these leasing projects, we think they should be bid. That we're talking about a lot of money, a lot of opportunity. It's an important program. We want to do it right. We want to follow what the Ohio General Assembly set forth in the law, which is a bidding process. So that's why we haven't proceeded just to, give out an unbid contract. I mean, these are high stakes contracts, and I respect the companies that are going to bid on them, but we want to follow that process. So those rules go into effect May 28th, and we'll see who nominates property and who wants to bid on it. I think the governor's comment was we would not have drilling on the surface of state parks. So what I expect will happen is that companies will bid and they will locate off the state park and they will engage in horizontal drilling that will go under state parks. Yes. Fracking is a part of vertical drilling as well, but it's that horizontal drilling. I expect that will happen. And I'll make the connection here with our budget. So there's been a lot of discussion out there of what kind of revenue is this going to bring to the state? Is this a windfall for ODNR? Can this cover your budget? And we don't know yet. Maybe we find out in a year from now that revenues are flowing and it can pay for fantastic things to, contribute to conservation in Ohio's parks, but we don't know yet. The earliest any project will go out to bid is in October. So the time frame the legislature has set up, it would first go out to bid in October. Even if that happened, it would be next year before we know what those revenues are. So we've tried to share with people, for this budget, where decisions are going to be made by July 1st, we don't know. And when that leasing occurs, there's lots of projections on royalties. And, an oil and gas company will say, this is what we project will happen. But they can and they should follow the market. So when prices are going to go down, they're going to produce less. And when prices go up, they're going to produce more, and they should not be required to not follow that just to give us revenues to keep the doors open. So we're trying to decouple that for now and say, a year or two from now, that's a discussion we should have. And if we see royalties flow into the state, the General Assembly and the governor need to be running that conversation and helping us understand what we do with the money. So our goal has been to sort of decouple that for now. Let us responsibly look at what leasing is, how it works, what it means. And separately, we have great state parks. We have great forests. We are so proud of them, and we've spent years now trying to make them the best in the country. We were just named one of the 4 finalists in the country for best state parks in the United States. And we won't know who wins till the fall, but just being in that group, I think really says something about Ohio and how much we care about it. And I want people to be proud every time they go to one of these places, proud they're in Ohio.
We've heard even Senate President Huffman talking about how this could bring about enough money for an income tax cut, but you're saying that there needs to be a period of waiting to see what actually happens.
We need to find out, and we need to deal with whatever restrictions that might exist on the expenditure of those funds, whether those are in state law or federal law, and figure it out together, what we do with that.
When you talk about going under state parks, will people who come to state parks see that? Will there be an impact on people who are hiking or fishing or camping or doing whatever they're doing in state parks?
So I'll answer that this way. We have hundreds of wells on state parks now. So we purchased parks that had old vertical wells. So right now, if you hike around in our parks, it wouldn't surprise me if you saw one. We also own surface property where we don't own the mineral rights underneath. And so there's drilling going on there right now where that occurs. So this isn't new. It's not different. I think what's important is how we regulate it, how we control it, how we keep it out of the public view, and how we do it safely.
Let's talk about algae blooms here. Forecasters at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration are predicting a moderate algae bloom on Lake Erie this year. But there are other lakes in Ohio that do have algae blooms. And the H2 Ohio program, which you referenced earlier, was designed to try to eliminate some of that phosphorus runoff from fields to stop those algae blooms. How is it working, or is it too early to tell?
It's still too early to tell for the most part. It's probably a long time in the making. It'll be a long time in the solving. I can tell you, my sister agencies, we're all working together on this. Our particular role at Natural Resources is using natural infrastructure. So we have been building wetlands across the state, focused in Northwest Ohio because, this effort led with the algae bloom on Lake Erie. But we have focused on other lakes and waterways where nutrient runoff is making a difference. And we're using these wetlands, right? So the water flows through and the soils absorb the phosphorus, the plants uptake the phosphorus, and we have stacks of research that show when it comes out the other side, it's cleaner. So we know the modeling shows this should work. And we have partnered with an outfit called the Lake Erie Aquatic Research Network. I called it an outfit, but it's a consortium of water quality experts from our institutions of higher education. So the OSUC grant kind of leads it up, but we have excellent scientists from all these universities. So we are giving them the money for the equipment and the work, but they are truly independent. And they are out there and have been for the last 3 years taking water samples, measuring. They are in the mud, in the muck. And they're going to tell us whether it's working, and they're going to tell me which style is working, because there's a lot of different styles of wetlands. And so I'm looking to them for some adaptive management advice. Like, this one worked, but not as well as this one. We need to do more of these. We need to focus here. I'm looking forward to that. I don't think today they can put an array of data in front of you that shows, we're not winning the war yet, but we're winning a lot of battles. And, we see it coming.
Are farmers buying into it? Because obviously farmers are a key element of this.
They are. And so that's the part the Ohio Department of Agriculture, my colleague, Brian Baldridge, is working with. And millions of acres are signed up for this program. So that, we need to look at some edge of field testing and see if that is making a difference. But so far, I think people are pretty happy with what we're seeing on a volunteer basis.
And finally, those who fish competitively should be warned that ODNR takes this stuff very seriously. Jacob Runyon and Chase Comiskey will each serve 10 days in jail and 6 months probation. They have to forfeit their boat and trailer. They have to pay a fine because they cheated in a fishing contest. And it was an ODNR investigation that found these fish that were stuffed with fish fillets and weights.
Yeah, we do take it seriously. I mean, people may not know, but Ohio hosts thousands of fishing tournaments every year across the state. It's pretty stunning. We have a website where people can see and sign up for them. But, this is supposed to be good fun. This is supposed to be a healthy thing to do with your family and friends. And tournaments are just a way to add a little competitive edge to it. And, you know, I think it hurts all of us to see that turn to crime. So we're disappointed.
There's big money in some of these tournaments. These folks were standing to win about $28,000 if this hadn't been caught by ODNR, an ODNR investigation.
And I don't know if they're more concerned about the time in jail or the forfeiture of their boat. But those boats are very expensive, so we'll see.
Senate budget amendments were due this week. The Senate budget is expected to pass by the first full week of June, so it can go back to the House for changes before going to the governor.